Hey friends, a couple of days ago I posted about a video about all my clutter, and actually it wasn't really about clutter, it was about possibilities. And I told you that my house wasn't full of junk, it was full of dreams, right? Half-finished projects, ideas, books, art supplies, career notebooks, future plans, and the response honestly has surprised me. So apparently there's a lot of us out there carrying more than stuff. We are lugging around possibilities, right? But something happened this week that made me realize there's another side to this story. I'm Lisa, and this is Second Peak Midlife. So my husband and I were in San Antonio this past week, and I had flown out to Sacramento for work first and then met him down there in Texas. And we decided to stay a couple of extra days because my parents lived there when my dad was stationed at Lackland in the Air Force. And then we lived there again after I was born, and he finished a residency program there. And I actually found the old house. And we did all the tourist things. We rode the riverboat ride, visited the Alamo, went up into the Tower of Americas, and my parents were actually there during the '68 World's Fair. And we wandered through museums and ate all kinds of wonderful meals. And I got out early every morning and walked before all the crowds got there. It was just me and a few joggers and the sidewalk cleaners and the gardeners, a few ducks and cooing pigeons. And I loved it. It was peaceful, and it just reminded me how much I love quiet mornings. But then Friday came, and while I was teaching at Lackland Air Force Base, my husband developed cellulitis in his leg, and he ended up in the emergency room for antibiotics. And thankfully they caught it, and he spent the rest of the trip, though, in the hotel room with his leg elevated on pillows so that he could heal enough to fly home. And so I finished teaching on Friday, and the lieutenant colonel gave me a tour of the base and the new Wilford Hall and the dental school and everything, and we walked past portraits of major generals who had been there during my father's tenure there. And I even saw the old base housing where it had been, and it was nostalgic, and my heart was really full, and it just seemed really rich and extraordinary. And then on the flight home, we hit some turbulence. There was nothing terrible, but just enough to make your mind start asking questions. What if this plane went down? What if neither of us made it home? And so I had this thought that it wasn't about money or about regrets, about my life. It wasn't about all those unfinished projects that I talked about. It was my son. Not just because he'd lose us, but of course that thought was there. But it was really because he wouldn't know where anything is. He would not know how to untangle our lives, our investments, our insurance policies, car titles, passwords, bank accounts, retirement, our estate. Even my husband would really struggle if I died first. And so then another thought hit me. It was like I've seen so many posts online from people trying to settle a loved one's estate in today's digital world that it's not just paper files anymore. It's passwords, it's two-step verification, online banking, investment accounts, subscriptions, cloud storage, photos, emails, social media. And sometimes they have the password, but the verification code then gets sent to the deceased person's phone or an email account that nobody can get into. And one institution requires a death certificate, the other needs other kinds of forms, and another won't even speak to you because your name isn't on the account. And, what should be a straightforward process just turns into weeks and months of frustration while you're grieving. And I don't know how all of those stories that I see end, but I do know this, that modern life has become so incredibly complicated, and if we don't simplify it while we're alive, then someone that we love will have to entangle it and untangle it after we're gone. And that realization just changed something in me. Last week I talked about preserving possibilities, and this week I realized that stewardship isn't just about what we keep. It's also about what I leave behind. And it's not just possessions, and it's not just money, it's clarity. And so maybe one of the greatest gifts that we can leave our families isn't just another inheritance. Maybe it's an organized life. We have one of those knockbox systems sitting in our house, and it's supposed to organize everything important, all your documents. Well, we've had it for 2 years, maybe longer. And the embarrassing part is that I haven't even opened it. Here it is. I haven't opened it not once. It's in the floor of my office, swimming in the giant pile of stuff that I don't know what to do with. And last year our church did an entire series on death, and not just preparing spiritually, but preparing financially, legally, practically, and making things easier for the people that you love. And I even mentioned the knockbox to other people there. And I still think it's a wonderful idea. Yet there mine sits there on the floor, unopened. And that was convicting, not because I don't know what to do, but because I haven't done what I already know what to do. And the irony became even more obvious this week. So tomorrow I'm going with my mom to meet an attorney. And we're finally dealing with some stuff that's still in her name and legal things that need to be sorted out. And here I am helping my mother prepare for her future and helping make her end-of-life decisions. And yet I haven't made the same preparations for my own family. And I mean, we have a will and a power of attorneys, but they need to be updated. Our son is no longer a minor, and he hasn't been a minor for 7 years. So it's a little overdue. Sometimes it's easier to help somebody else get their affairs in order than it is to face your own. And when my dad died, he gave us one final gift. And he had already planned everything. The paperwork was organized. The decisions had been made. Even his funeral was completely planned down to the last song. And do you know what we had left to do? All I had to do was write his eulogy and decide what I was going to wear. That's it. And at the time, I don't think I fully appreciated what a tremendous act of love that was, that he was still caring for us, even after he was gone. And he wrote each of us a letter to open after he had died. And that's the kind of gift I want to leave to my family. I don't want to leave confusion or scavenger hunts or stacks of papers or passwords that nobody can find or accounts that nobody knows even exist. I just want to leave some clarity and some peace and one less burden during one of the hardest seasons of their lives. So we landed in the plane and I opened Facebook, and the first thing I saw was a friend that posted about friends of theirs. There was a couple around our age who had been killed in a car accident. And I just sat there and I read it and I reread it. And sometimes life whispers, but sometimes it shouts at you. And for me, this really felt like a shout. Not one of fear, but one of stewardship. And last week I said that my house wasn't full of clutter, that it was full of unrealized dreams. And this week I realized that my family's potentially facing too many unknowns. And those are different problems. Keeping old notebooks because I might write a book someday, that's one thing. But leaving my son a scavenger hunt through my financial life, that's another. And I've spent so much time preserving possibilities that maybe it's time to preserve some clarity. Not for me, but for the people that I love. And it's funny because I always thought that organization was about making my life easier. But now I'm thinking that maybe organization is one of the greatest gifts we can leave behind. Not because I'm expecting to die tomorrow, but because none of us knows when tomorrow won't come, you know. And that's not morbid. It's loving. And my son shouldn't have to grieve and then become a detective. My husband shouldn't have to search every drawer looking for that one piece of paper, you know. Love prepares. And love thinks ahead. And love makes hard decisions before someone else has to. A few days ago, like I said, my house wasn't full of clutter. It was stuffed with all those unrealized dreams. And I still believe that that's true. But now I think midlife asks us another question. And I've said this before, that maybe midlife is a season when accumulation of a lifetime asks us, what are you going to bring into the second half? And what are you going to finally lay down? And maybe that's not just about things in our closets. Maybe it's about financial complexity. Maybe it's about unfinished decisions. And how many times do we say, oh, I've been meaning to do that? And maybe it's about finally putting our lives in order, because not that we're afraid of dying, but because we love the people who will keep living after us. And I'm not making this video because I've got it all figured out. I'm making it because I need some accountability. So today I'm opening the knock box. Not because I think something bad's about to happen, but because my dad showed me what love looks like. You know, he prepared for his absence. And now it's my turn. I'm starting the knock box. I'm going to organize our important documents. I'm going to simplify our financial life. And I'm going to stop saying that I'll get around to it someday, because someday isn't on the calendar. Today is. And maybe that's another lesson that midlife teaches us, to not fear death, but to steward life, not just in the years we're given, but the people we're leaving behind. So if you've been putting off getting your affairs in order, maybe this is your gentle nudge too. Not because you're expecting something bad to happen, like I said, but because loving people well sometimes looks surprisingly ordinary and boring. Sometimes love looks like labeled folders, or passwords that are written down, or a will, or an organized file, that conversation you've been postponing. They're not exciting, but they might become one of the greatest gifts that you can ever leave your family. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.